Gas prices are back over $4. First time they've been at that level since September 2022. Third time in history if you look at the previous two times, 2008, 2022, and now. We're going to talk about what it means to retailers and what it means to consumers. Joining us for the conversation today is John Eichberger. He is a longtime host, guest, creator, whatever you want to say about Convenience Matters. He is also leads the Transportation Energy Institute, which has its annual conference in 2 weeks, April 20 to 22nd in Dallas. I will be there if that sways you to either go or not go. We'll see about that. But, thanks for joining us. Let's talk about gas prices. Now, John, I imagine the first thing is there's a lot of people that are ripping up their presentations right now because of the change over the last month in oil prices and gas prices, consumer behavior, and there's a lot of decks that are being revised right now to have the best information for the TEI conference.
To a degree, maybe. The cool thing about the way this conference was set up is the first morning is really all about global. It's all about global trends, global developments. So yeah, clearly events in the Middle East are going to be part of that conversation. The volatility in oil prices after the hostilities began will be part of that conversation. But when it comes down to it, it's not really a new story. You and I have talked about gas prices for years, and there were times when I was on CNBC every month talking about gas prices at one point, and the story has not evolved a whole lot. We are a global market. We drill oil in certain markets of the world. We ship them to other markets of the world, and when those shipping lanes, those shipping corridors become compromised, you have a situation where some markets aren't going to get the oil they need. The U.S. is not short of fuel, but the commodity is a globally traded commodity. And we do have countries that are short product, that are putting in conservation measures, that are doing things to mitigate the loss of energy, mitigate the cost of energy for their constituents. The United States is doing some of that as well. But the real issue here for American consumers who may hear me say we don't have a shortage in the United States right now, is then why are my prices going up? Well, when you're dealing with a commodity like oil that's so critical to economic operations throughout the world, it's traded on the open market. And those who are trading contracts are looking at this situation in the Middle East, and they're saying, we are not confident the supply is going to be available in 2 weeks and 4 weeks. So we're going to bid up the price in order to make sure we're getting the contracts we need. So that is happening, and we're seeing that happen. On the next level, wholesale gasoline is also traded on the open market.
RBOB, if anybody wants to look at it, RBOB.
And that stands for Reformulated Blend Stock for Oxygen and Blending. And there's also CBOB, Conventional Blend Stock for Oxygen and Blending. Now we're getting into the real nerd territory. Gasoline. Okay, it's being traded on the market. It's being traded on futures contracts. That is subject to the same speculation what the market might look like in a couple weeks or a couple months. And so that is having an inflationary impact on prices. And ultimately, the retailer is buying product from wholesale markets. It has to pay those extra prices, and it has to cover its costs. And so it is a domino effect that you have some shortages in some markets, you definitely have disruption in distribution, and the markets are reacting. And the good thing is markets are price discoveries, and when the situation resolves, the markets will return back to previously expected levels. It's a difficult time for a lot of people. I never want to diminish the impact of higher price at the pump. I was in California last week, spent more than $6 a gallon on fuel. I saw some diesel postings for over $7 a gallon. But I'll also quote the Jerome Powell, the chair of the Fed. These energy situations are always temporary. And this is going to be a temporary situation. We don't know when the Strait of Hormuz will be reopened We don't know when the market will regain its stability and the traders will be able to start bidding the price of commodities down, but we know it's going to happen. It's just a matter of when.
So 25 years ago, and John used to work for NACS before the Fuels Institute, which later became Transportation Energy Institute. But 25 years ago, I guess it's the anniversary, yay, we put out something that we called the gas price kit. And it was something that was designed around communications because at the time, gas prices were getting close to $2 a gallon. I believe they hit $2 a gallon in 2003 for the first time.
Yeah.
But a lot of concern about $1.50 gas, all of that stuff. So we essentially had three broad messages in that first gas price kit. And the reason I mentioned that, this is not, look at us 25 years ago, wasn't that interesting? But it's the same three messages, essentially, that we talked about 25 years ago. Number one, the central message was 93% of the price of a gallon of gas is determined before it gets to the retailer. Message being, it's oil, it's other costs. The retailer at the time, margins were probably in that 10 cent, 15 cent range, much lower. Second one, it was, we don't like high prices because, based as a consumer facing, people tend to spend less inside the store. They're not in a good mood, all those other factors. So retailers don't like high prices any more than the customers they sell it to. And the third was all these other costs go up, particularly credit card fees, so swipe fees, et cetera. And those were our central messages. And the reason I mention that is we've been looking at phone calls, interviews, all that. You had talked about CNBC, but collectively what NACS has done, we log every interview that we do, every reporter interview, whether it's you, me, whoever else along the way. And what we saw is like a direct link between the price of gas and the reporter interaction in those early years, 2003, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, $4 gas, sharp incline, more higher prices, more reporter calls. After 2008, we saw a change, and we saw when prices next started to go up and hit close to $4 a gallon, or whatever they did, the media engagement went down. And that wasn't because we weren't working as hard. That was because the story was starting to get told, and the bad story started going away. Those phone calls about, I want to talk about gouging, I want to talk about this, they started to disappear. And so the point is, we need to constantly educate people. It worked over the 25-year period, but as new reporters come in, as new media sources emerge, continually tell that story because it's the same three messages. And that we see that in recent Associated Press articles. There was one that came out today where the headline was essentially retailers, let me find the exact headline. It was, dizzying U.S. fuel prices are determined by factors largely outside of a gas station's control. That's the headline of AP, and AP is the largest news source in the country, in the world. So that's the message that we want to get out 25 years ago. That's the message that's still getting out. And fortunately, it's being heard. But I'm also thinking that as prices stay high for whatever length of time they do, that other stories will be chased. Are there things that you're thinking about or hearing about from your members, whether it's a retail side, whether it's a fuel side, whether it's a car manufacturer side, that, the longer this goes on, the more this makes me nervous?
Look, the media has a huge influence over what people think about. And when the media news cycle starts getting thirsty, it starts looking for stories. Look, high energy prices is an easy story. High gas prices has always been an easy story because it is a headline that angers the consumer. They don't like it. They see it every day. They hear about it. They hate paying for gas. They hate paying more for gas. And so it's a real easy, if it bleeds, it leads type of mindset for the media. So what happens, however, and what I anticipate to happen every time we have an escalation in prices is a couple things. The government wants to show that they're taking care of their people. Now, once the government says, we're here to help, I get nervous because their decisions are usually predicated on optics and not actual fundamental improvement to the market. The concept of a gasoline excise tax holiday is dangerous because retailers have been losing money as the price went up. And if you waive an 18.4 cent per gallon federal excise tax and the price doesn't come down immediately, there's going to be allegations of gouging and profiteering. And then when the price comes back, when the tax comes back, prices are likely going to shoot up. And so there's going to be that shock wave as well. So it's a double whammy. At the same time, it's a temporary situation. 18 cents a gallon, how big of an impact is that on $4 a gallon gasoline to the American pocketbook at the time when our road fund, which is what that tax funds, is depleted? And we have a serious infrastructure problem in the country. So that is those type of knee-jerk reactions. They sound good on paper. They sound good in the headlines, but they really cause more disruption than anything. But as we start talking about high prices, you start talking about that. You start talking about watchdogs watching retailers go, well, you're charging $8 a gallon. Everybody else is charging $6. You must be profiteering, without understanding the fundamental economics of running a retail business. It's not easy. And there's a lot of cost and a lot of difference in expenses from station to station. I see a lot of that grandstanding potentially on the horizon, if not already, and that bothers me. Grandstanding for attention to demonstrate, hey, I'm doing something, is not the same as having a fundamental influence over what's happening in the market. So those are the things I'm most concerned about, is government overreaching and doing things just because it makes them feel good, but it doesn't do anything fundamentally, and it causes more trouble than it's worth.
And mentioning the gas tax holidays, that's one of the things that that was the other Associated Press article. And it looked at Georgia is a state that had the gas tax holiday, 33 or so cents. And the Associated Press article from yesterday, again, major news outlet, said gas prices are high, but DeNumber supports suspending state gas taxes. And it walked through all the elements and some of the industry concerns, and chief among them is that people are watching, did prices drop exactly 33 cents?
Right.
And you don't know how much somebody has in their tank. You don't know all those are issues. You don't know if at the same time the wholesale price jumped up 10 cents. So if you drop it 23 cents, you look like you're bad. So there's all those areas that all these other states looking at it too. There's a good half a dozen or so that we've reported in NACS Daily are looking at gas tax holidays. It's been talked at the federal levels.
Market manipulation is bad, even when it's the government doing it. It's disruptive. It's deceptive. It doesn't do any good. Yeah, it might make them feel good. It might make consumers feel, hey, at least I saved 15 cents a gallon or something like that. But in terms of the long-term impact on the market, it's really dangerous.
And also, I guess I'll put on the cynical hat. Some of these are being done for October and November for ads where, look what I did, look who opposed this idea. And I think that's also where it's difficult for the retail community to obviously solid information and explanation of issues is always important. But it gets a little difficult in talking about something like this, where a consumer might say, wait, are they saying that 33 cents per gallon savings is not important to me? Yes, it is. Let's find different ways to do that. Let's look at either supply or demand. There's some other bigger issues that are not Band-Aids. And We talked about that a couple weeks ago on the podcast. There's all these different things that can be temporary feel good kind of things, but it really comes down to right now a supply demand imbalance, and that's going to maybe not play well in a 30-second commercial, but that's where the work needs to be done right now.
Well, your point is, I mean, we can't stress this enough. Look, 25 cents a gallon may not affect certain consumers. It has a significant impact on others. And we don't want to negate the impact of higher prices on families' budgets. It's hard. You and I have studied consumer behavior and gas prices for 25 years, and we've tracked it. When prices go up, the impact on consumers' mindset about the economy as a whole is significant. That is the bellwether. That price point is a bellwether, how they feel about the economy. It affects how much they can spend elsewhere, because I always get angry when people say, well, prices are low, so people are going to drive more. Prices are high, people aren't going to drive as much. No, about 95% of your miles you don't have a choice about. So you still have to do the things you have to do, and you need energy to do it. So you don't have a choice. Well, I'm going to skip getting gas today. Well, then your car's going to skip starting today. It's not an option. And so when you are forced into that purchase and the price goes up, you hate it. And when it gets too expensive, it really affects the rest of your life. So we don't want to negate that. It's a big deal. The problem is when you have these initiatives they're motivated by politics and optics. They're not motivated by fixing the fundamentals. That's a problem. Yeah. Again, it sounds good. And if I was in that situation where it was really hurting me, I work from home. It doesn't hurt me that bad. But if I was really hurting, I go, yes, please. I understand that. But it's not going to change the dynamics of what's going on over in the Middle East. It's not going to change the dynamics of what's going on the futures market.
So you're saying when eventually gas prices go down by a gallon, I'm not going to be doing like loop-de-loops when I drive to work and just take a couple extra miles just because? You're saying I'll do that same straight line, whether it's $2, $3, or $4?
Yeah.
Well, you're right.
I guarantee it. And the other thing is people talk about when gas prices go up, will that increase the sale of hybrids and electric vehicles? It does a couple things. And I need to look at the numbers. I need to do the correlation analysis on this, but I'm pretty confident what I'm about to say. People start thinking about it. I'll bet there are more searches online right now about alternative fuel vehicles than there was 2 months ago. Mm-hmm. Okay. I'll bet there's a lot more people talking about electric vehicles and hybrids and other things downsizing their vehicle. But I don't anticipate when I do the historical analysis seeing a correlation between high gas prices and an increase in sales of EVs or hybrids, because you're paying an extra 50 cents or $1 at the pump. Yeah, that hurts. Understand that. Can you really afford $50,000 for a new car? Which is more expensive? And prices are going to come down in the future. They always do. This is, as Powell said, this is a temporary thing. That will get resolved over time. But that car payment of $750 to $1,000 a month for 6 to 7 years, that doesn't go away when the prices of fuel come down. And so I don't anticipate we're going to see a huge increase in those sales in the short term. Maybe long term, when people are looking to buy a different vehicle anyway, they may say, okay, I'm not going to get screwed at the pump again. I'm going to switch. And that may be the case, but it's not going to prompt people to go out and buy a vehicle out of their normal rhythm of doing so.
So you mentioned vehicles, you mentioned longer term horizons. Let's talk a little bit about, you have auto manufacturers as members of the Transportation Energy Institute. Now, a lot of them, if you asked them, or let's pretend I was them, I might think, okay, here we are. We have gas prices that are in the $2. People love crossover vehicles. May not be fuel efficient, but it looks like a really good idea to double down on these vehicles. And then we saw like a decline in EVs last year, overall sales for new EVs. So throw all that in the mix, but also it's really difficult to be an auto manufacturer and predict what the future 5 years from now looks like, because isn't that roughly the timeline from we have a concept, we're gonna blueprint, to the first one rolls off the assembly line, and we're only 5 years away from the end of COVID. So
Right.
when you think about like what could come up and disrupt things, that's a tough gig to be the auto manufacturers.
It is a very difficult path, and it's complicated by changing regulatory environments. 2 years ago, the administration was focused on climate change, on promoting electric vehicles. Today, the administration is not so inclined. And so the incentives, the pressure to convert and produce electric vehicles has been mitigated domestically. And so you're seeing these companies take these massive write-offs on their investments on EVs because the regulatory pressure to deliver electrified vehicles has been taken off their shoulders for a while domestically. But the key is if they focus on what their customers want, if we can have stable regulations, performance-based regulations on we need to have lower emissions, higher efficiency, safer vehicles, and they can be consistent, then the automakers can focus on how do we do that and satisfy what the customer wants. Now, on the electric vehicle front, we did see a downturn in EV sales after the federal tax credit disappeared September 30th, 2025, but we saw it recover in December and January. We're close to 2024 numbers again. I do believe we're going to sell 1 million new electric vehicles this year. I believe we're going to be selling more electric vehicles that customers really are passionate about buying. And I think we're going to have better cars. They're going to have more attractive cars, not just compliance, regulatory PR tools, but cars that are designed to really support what the customer wants. I was talking to a research firm just yesterday, and they're saying that the research they're doing for their auto clients is all about what amenities do the customers want. Do they want heated seats? Do they need big cup holders? What do they want? That's really important. The other side, and this is more towards the convenience industry who have invested in chargers, who may be thinking, oh man, is my investment going to be worthless? Absolutely not. We've been analyzing charger utilization for years. And what we found last year is we increased the number of DC fast charging ports by 50% last year. Yet utilization stayed the same. That means you increased the market by half again, and yet every single unit still had the same amount of utilization. So we are nowhere near tapped out on demand. Take this next step here, though. The last 2 years, more than half the EVs we've sold were leased. We're going to start seeing hundreds of thousands of leased vehicles enter the used car market at fractions on the dollar compared to a new EV. That means a demographic profile of consumer who's always wanted an EV but couldn't afford one can now afford one. And they are less likely to have a garage at home. So they're going to be using the chargers more. So I honestly believe that we're going to see utilization of public chargers go up the next 2 to 3 years significantly. And from an energy retailing perspective, that's great news if you've invested in a charger or thinking about it, because you have a new class of customer who's going to need your charger. And put them out there, then come to your store. Hopefully you can sell them something else. And I think that's, there's a lot of opportunity there. EVs aren't dead. EVs aren't taking over either.
Mm-hmm.
They are. And they're going to be a growing part of the market. And there's opportunities there that we just need to make sure we capitalize on.
So you combining everything you said, it was very interesting to me, because I think my reaction is gas prices go up. Think about more people might be buying EVs. And yes, that might be the case because they are, fuel efficient because they don't require fuel. But the real story or the headline in all that is leased cars coming out on the market. And if you have the ability to charge as these new cars come on the market, you can use the $4 gas, $5 gas, $6 gas, whatever state you're in, as a hook to say, come to my stores once you get that, because we've been thinking about you and we've been waiting for you. So there are some real opportunities here, because a ton of challenges as gas prices go up with how do people spend money and all that. But it's a lot of it's communications. How do we find avenues to talk to customers differently so that they get you? And it sounds like you hit on something pretty important for people to consider with EVs.
Yeah, and I've always said this when I'm talking to the NACS audiences. Let's say you have a great customer. They're loyal. They use your loyalty app. They come, they fill up their car twice a week, and they fill up their car on Thursday, and they come and they buy a cup of coffee, they buy a breakfast sandwich, they buy something else, right? And you make money off that. They go out Saturday and they buy an electric vehicle. Come Thursday, they still want coffee, they still want a breakfast sandwich, still want whatever else, but they also need electrons. Don't you want them coming back to your store? Just because you're not selling them liquid energy, if you can sell them electricity and get them inside the store to buy the same things they bought before, we're not talking about, I don't want to serve EVs. No, you want to serve your customers. And just because your customers are buying something different, maybe you should sell them that different thing they're buying. If they switch from coffee to tea, don't you want to have tea? Yeah. An EV charging station is a little more expensive than a hot water and a tea bag, but the concept is still there. And we're in the business, convenience retailers are in the business of serving their customers quickly, efficiently, and effectively, giving them time back, helping them get back on the road. With DC fast charging station, you can do that. And there's huge opportunities there. Yes, there's costs. And we have an electric vehicle council that's focused on how we support the market and enhancing the return on investment so it becomes profitable. Because if operating a charging station is not profitable, guess what we're not going to be doing anymore? We're not going to be operating charging stations.
That's right.
And so how do we fix the profitability hook on these chargers so that the customers that we have been serving for decades can still be served and we can still make some money on it?
So end with just I don't want to call it word association, but just the word of the day, the hour, the week, whatever. Last year, the SOI Summit, the next day of this industry summit. This year's summit's a week away, but virtually everybody.
Speaking.
Yeah. So
there you go. Stay till the end, guys. I'll close it hard.
I'm taking notes twice, that and TEI. But at the SOI Summit last year, virtually every speaker said the word of the moment is uncertainty. And that was related to President Trump's tariffs. It seems like 100 years ago. But it was uncertainty and it was tariffs. Remains to be seen what the word of the moment will be. Maybe you can think about that for yours if somebody doesn't beat you to it at SOI. But at either SOI or at TEI, which is the following week, the Transportation Energy Institute meeting, do you have a word of the moment or phrase of the moment that you think will carry at both meetings?
I don't think it'll carry at SOI because SOI is very domestically focused, but is global. What we've seen the last year and a half is a retreat from the global economy, a retreat from global engagements, retreat from alliances, retreat from traditional geopolitical relations. We've seen a lot of change in domestic policy. But transportation is a global market. We refine oil from all over the world to produce gasoline to ship all over the world. We produce vehicles to be sold in multiple markets around the world. All these things are subject to global influences and global impacts and global regulations. Automakers don't just answer to Washington. They answer to European Union, Asia, China, Japan, Latin America. They answer to all these different rulers. When you think about emissions, this administration is not focused on it. That's fine. But you know what? Businesses still are. I have a lot of multinational corporations on my board. I go, look, we have not given up our net zero by 2050 pledge, and we're still asking our business partners to participate with us. The automakers are not backing off on fuel efficiency improvements because their customers like that. And every one of them knows the administration at some point will change. And the whipsaw of regulatory expectations can go back the other direction. And so what we're going to be talking about in Texas at the TEI annual conference is what are the broader perspectives that are influencing the market? You have Washington, but what about other markets that are influencing multinational business decisions? But ultimately, what does that customer want? And if we focus on that, look, the customer wants a cleaner environment. They want lower prices. They want more choices. They want more convenience. They want all that. We have to balance that. And I think, we have to get out of this. The U.S. government is the be-all, end-all of everything that's influencing the market. Companies are looking beyond Washington, D.C. for guidance as to where they need to be 10 years from now. You mentioned the 5-year timeline for automakers. Yeah, they're looking 5-10 years down the road. And they're looking for what are the stability indicators? What are those demands, those requirements that are stable and predictable? And we're going to build to those. And this other stuff is kind of noise. Yes, we'll take advantage of the opportunities that are afforded to us, and we're not going to take it for granted. We're going to pay attention to it, but we're also not going to wholeheartedly throw our entire strategic plan out the window because of the results of an election.
So I'm not going to try to summarize that because I think that's a perfect way to end this. John, I'll see you on the road the next couple weeks.
Yep.
I'm sure we're going to see a lot of folks listening to us on the road. So come say hi, say you listen to the podcast, give us ideas. And we'll be talking a lot more about what's going on with fuels and how global events affect the corner store. So thanks again for joining us today, John.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you all for listening to Convenience Matters.
Convenience Matters is brought to you by NACS and produced in partnership with Human Factor. For more information, visit convenience.org.